On January 27, 2026, London once again found itself caught in a storm of scandal, the kind that seizes headlines and sends shockwaves through every layer of society. A royal crisis of remarkable scale suddenly unfolded, prompting swift reactions from Buckingham Palace insiders and drawing intense global attention. Sources close to the royal household claim that Meghan Markle allegedly attempted to pressure the British royal family, reportedly seeking a way back into the royal fold. According to reports, the plan involved a calculated media threat, including manipulated footage targeting 22-year-old Lady Louise Windsor and her longtime partner, tech entrepreneur Felix Clamp. The timing appears anything but coincidental. This revelation surfaced just 48 hours after Netflix quietly pulled Meghan's upcoming documentary series, citing concerns over content integrity. Simultaneously, 3 senior Archewell Foundation officials, including the chief strategy officer and head of legal, resigned without warning, adding to speculation of internal turmoil and disarray within the organization. Events seem to be unraveling rapidly across both Hollywood and royal circles, leaving observers searching for clarity. However, the most significant impact was felt around Lady Louise Windsor herself. Known for her reserved nature, loyalty, and composed demeanor, Louise has reportedly entered a complete media blackout. Palace aides confirmed she deactivated her social media accounts and withdrew from all public engagements, including a much-anticipated appearance alongside her mother, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. The emotional strain on Louise, someone who has largely remained out of the spotlight, is said to be considerable, prompting close aides and family members to move into a heightened protective stance. Sophie is believed to have issued a private, urgent memo to royal advisors, emphasizing that this situation has escalated beyond a typical royal dispute. This is a direct attack on the character of a young woman who has done nothing but honor her family, the memo reportedly stated. Princess and Louise's aunt, well known for her firm discipline, quickly convened a late-night emergency meeting with legal and intelligence teams, signaling a thorough and uncompromising response. At the same time, Princess Catherine has been working closely with Anne and Sophie, offering unwavering support to Louise while helping shape a strategic institutional reaction. Insiders describe this trio as presenting a unified front, combining maternal protection with calculated precision, a dynamic rarely seen in modern royal crises. According to exclusive legal briefings, the alleged scheme traces back to January 23, when Meghan reportedly sent a confidential email to a contact linked to Princess Anne's security liaison team. The message was marked as urgent and contained what sources describe as a direct ultimatum: restore her access to VIP security protocols, reinstate patronage privileges, and provide public backing to counter defamatory narratives, or she would release her own version of events, including unreleased footage involving Louise and Felix Clamp. The footage in question is now believed to be manipulated, showing Felix in what appears to be a compromising situation with an unidentified individual. Forensic analysts have reportedly concluded that the video was synthetically generated, designed specifically to mislead and shape public perception. Tensions escalated further when segments from Meghan's January 25 interview with U.S. podcast Atalia Rowe were leaked ahead of its scheduled March release. In the clip, Meghan offers a restrained smile before saying, "There are people within that institution, young women included, who've been shielded for far too long, while others were sacrificed. Maybe it's time the world sees what happens when the mask slips." The ominous tone sent royal commentators and analysts into a frenzy. Social media erupted almost instantly. Within hours, the hashtag #ProtectLadyLouise surged worldwide, surpassing 130,000 tweets by morning. Former royal correspondent Georgia Clean wrote, "Meghan threatens Louise. This has gone beyond Meghan versus the firm. What many are now calling a targeted smear campaign forced both the palace and the public to confront what appears to be a calculated and deeply personal media assault against a young royal." Sources close to Archewell describe Meghan as increasingly desperate for relevance, with brand partnerships weakening and public sentiment shifting sharply against her. A recent New Yorker feature titled "The Sussex Collapse: Power, PR, and the Fall of a Duchess" claims that a major Spotify deal reportedly collapsed due to concerns over narrative control. At the same time, Meghan's planned children's book project with Penguin Random House has allegedly been put on hold. Financial pressures are also surfacing, with annual security costs, estimated at over $9.4 million, reportedly tied to multiple unpaid invoices flagged by two California-based firms. UK security analyst Philip Wesson summarized the situation bluntly. She's backed into a corner. When influence declines, leverage becomes the weapon. In response, Princess has initiated a full forensic audit of the alleged video materials, with high court barristers already engaged. Sources close to and indicate her position is unwavering. No concessions will be made. If this footage is released, we will pursue full civil and criminal action globally if required, one insider stated. Duchess Sophie is said to have enlisted private investigators to trace the origins of the manipulated footage, while Princess Catherine is spearheading a reputational defense strategy aimed at countering false narratives before the podcast officially airs. Meanwhile, Lady Louise, though visibly shaken, remains composed and determined. She is currently receiving continuous emotional support at Bagshot Park, with Sophie canceling all personal commitments to stay by her daughter's side. At the center of the controversy lies the interview itself, filmed on January 25th at the Belvedere Hotel in Santa Monica. It was intended to serve as the flagship launch for Meghan's podcast relaunch, Reflections, backed by a $4.2 million production agreement with Goldwire Studios. Though originally scheduled for a March release, early leaks have already triggered a media storm. Insiders confirm that the 28-minute preview segment was far from casual. It was deliberate, carefully structured, and potentially explosive. In the footage, Meghan speaks with calm, almost rehearsed precision, but analysts note a distinct shift in tone as the interview progresses. At minute 19, she leans forward and states, "It's easy to label a woman difficult when she chooses to protect herself. But what about those who hide behind royal walls and turn fragility into mythology?" While no names were mentioned, commentators widely agree the implication was clear, pointing toward Lady Louise Windsor and those closest to her. Shortly after, Meghan adds cryptically, "When people begin to see certain truths, they won't blame outsiders anymore. They'll start asking why the silence was so carefully funded." Analysts interpret this as a subtle yet pointed critique of Princess and Duchess Sophie, suggesting indirectly that institutional power has been used to shield reputations. Palace insiders confirm that a forensic assessment of the alleged video, reportedly codenamed Project Oak Ridge, depicts Felix Klamp at an underground bar in Berlin. However, metadata and geolocation evidence reportedly place him elsewhere at the same time, raising serious questions about the footage's authenticity. Royal Counsel Sir Alaric Thorne has already filed a preliminary injunction with the High Court's Privacy Division. Experts warn that the video represents a highly sophisticated deepfake, engineered not to establish truth, but to introduce doubt and destabilize reputations. Behavioral media strategist Dr. Leandra explained, "Meghan doesn't need the public to fully believe the video. She only needs them to question Louise long enough to regain visibility and public sympathy." With Netflix shelving her documentary, Spotify negotiations stalled, and multiple senior resignations mounting, Meghan's brand value appears to be declining rapidly. A report from marketing firm Credo Group indicates her approval ratings in Q1 2026 have fallen to 23% in the UK and Canada and 31% in the United States, a 17-point drop compared to the previous year. Meanwhile, the royal response is accelerating. Princess Catherine has quietly commissioned a media audit to track how the leaked clips are being distributed and to identify who authorized their release through Goldwire Studios' distribution network. The palace has also brought in a private security firm specializing in media infiltration, an unmistakable sign that every possible measure is being taken to defend both Lady Louise and the institution itself. From the early hours of January 26, 2026, it became evident that Buckingham Palace was operating at full capacity to contain what was quickly becoming a major crisis. Princess wasted no time, coordinating directly with cyberforensics specialist Dr. Irene Kandel to track the origin server behind the manipulated footage targeting Lady Louise Windsor and Felix Klamp. Shortly after, a rare public statement was issued. The Princess Royal has zero tolerance for falsified reputational attacks. Any material deemed defamatory will be met with immediate judicial action across all necessary jurisdictions. The message left no room for ambiguity. Defamation would not be tolerated. Full stop. At the same time, Duchess Sophie abruptly cut short her humanitarian visit to Ghana, returning urgently to the UK to stand beside her daughter. Royal press officials confirmed she held a closed-door, 90-minute session with the Queen's Counsel on the morning of January 26th. Many observers began asking the same question. Why hasn't Meghan backed down? The answer may lie within leaked contractual clauses from Goldwire Studios and Archwell Audio, dated October 14, 2025. According to reports, the agreement required delivery of a 4-episode podcast series by March 15, 2026, with at least one episode centered on personal narrative reform. Failure to meet these terms would reportedly trigger immediate financial clawbacks and reputational penalties of up to $3.8 million. In simple terms, without delivering compelling, high-impact content, Meghan risks significant losses. However, insiders suggest that financial pressure isn't the only factor at play. Fear of palace retaliation may be equally influential. Meghan is said to have underestimated the unified and forceful response from Catherine, Anne, and Sophie, leaving her caught between contractual obligations and the full weight of royal institutional power. By the morning of January 26th, global headlines had already taken over. The Times ran with Meghan's reckless return to the throne, while Vanity Fair published how the royals are quietly dismantling Meghan's narrative one podcast at a time. Support for Louise surged rapidly. The movement #TeamLouise generated over 70,000 pieces of user-created content across Instagram and TikTok, with creators rallying behind the young royal. As one commentator put it, "This isn't about Meghan anymore, it's about a woman threatening a young girl to salvage a collapsing brand." Behind the scenes, Archwell's PR team began a carefully curated campaign, releasing images of Meghan with her children and emphasizing themes of healing, resilience, and personal truth. Yet insiders caution that beneath these polished visuals lies a far more complex reality. A figure allegedly cornered legally, financially, and reputationally, potentially willing to fracture ties with the monarchy to protect her standing. At 7:45 a.m., King Charles III, still in his Balmoral wool robe, received an encrypted briefing from the Royal Legal Advisory Group. The subject line read, "Actionable evidence. Potential malicious deepfake attempt by the Duchess of Sussex." Charles immediately summoned Lord Alastair Pembroke, President of the Privy Council, to Clarence House. According to a source present, the king delivered just one decisive line before authorizing emergency directives. "This is no longer about Harry. This is institutional sabotage. Act accordingly." An internal report, labeled X42B, was compiled by a joint task force involving the Royal Media Integrity Office, the Queen's Council on Digital Forensics, MI5, and the Psychological Threat Evaluation Unit. The document outlined 5 critical risks: the deliberate use of deepfake technology, targeted character attacks against Lady Louise, strategically timed releases aligned with financial pressures, manipulation of public and legal sympathy, and the monetization of defamatory content under U.S. podcast protections. The report concluded with a stark warning. The Duchess of Sussex may be engaging in coercive media tactics designed to gain leverage and public sympathy. In response, King Charles reactivated Emerald Shield, a long-standing palace protocol designed to contain and neutralize reputational threats. The strategy encompassed coordinated royal image protection, cross-jurisdiction legal action, counter-narrative media production, and comprehensive digital forensic tracking of all manipulated materials. Clarence House also directed its legal teams to examine both civil and criminal options against any distribution partners found knowingly hosting altered or malicious content. Princess Anne reportedly took charge of the digital integrity response, with sources revealing that King Charles personally expressed gratitude for her foresight, recalling warnings she had issued months earlier about the potential for reputational coercion involving Meghan. Prince William, meanwhile, focused on implementing protective measures for Louise, Sophie, and other younger royals who could become potential targets. Insiders describe William as composed yet firm, reportedly stating, "If she goes after Louise, she eliminates any chance of future negotiations." Behind the scenes, a series of coordinated communications reached Netflix's legal division, Spotify's trust and safety teams, Archwell's New York media representatives, and even oversight contacts at Goldman Sachs regarding dormant Sussex-linked charitable accounts. At least 3 U.S.-based sponsors are said to have frozen funding, pending the outcome of the palace's legal assessment. As one corporate insider put it, "We cannot align ourselves with reputational instability." Meghan's risk profile has shifted overnight. This situation extended far beyond Louise. It became a matter of control, a test of how far the monarchy's silence could be pushed. Meghan had made her move, and King Charles, backed by centuries of royal authority, had now delivered a decisive response. By early afternoon, a Royal Alert Code Tier 1C was issued, activating emergency containment protocols across the family. Inside Windsor Castle's Crimson Room, Charles convened a closed-door summit, offering a single directive. Sophie will lead. Her daughter is under attack. Give her full authority. The atmosphere was intense, emotionally charged, yet strategically focused. Sophie arrived directly from Bagshot Park alongside Louise, who appeared pale, quiet, and carefully shielded from media exposure. Princess Catherine placed a reassuring hand on Sophie, softly saying, "You're not alone. We stand together." Sophie, composed but resolute, responded firmly, "She is targeting my child. This isn't PR. This isn't content. This is psychological warfare." At that very moment, a fresh wave of headlines began dominating both British and American media. The Mirror reported on threats of a leaked video allegedly implicating Louise's partner. The Times and The Telegraph prepared in-depth analyses on potential digital warfare. BuzzFeed and Rolling Stone soon followed, confirming that Meghan's upcoming March podcast would delve into alleged institutional betrayal, featuring a previously unreleased and reportedly damaging video segment. Although Meghan's team stopped short of naming Louise directly, the implications were widely understood. Felix Clamp, 22, a reserved British-Swiss art history graduate closely linked to Louise, became an unintended target in what appeared to be a coordinated digital smear. MI5 media tracing experts reportedly confirmed that the clip had been manipulated, time-distorted, and enhanced by a third-party contractor previously connected to Archwell Studios through a now-dissolved LLC. This revelation, uncovered during the Windsor summit, reportedly sparked controlled anger from Princess Anne. She wants to trade in falsehoods for attention, but she chose the wrong family, and is said to have remarked. Sophie then outlined a three-tier containment strategy, internally referred to as the Windsor Firewall. The plan included preemptive injunctions to block distribution across platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, alongside the rollout of strategic counter-narrative messaging. In parallel, Catherine Anne proposed a public-facing initiative, a children's hospital visit in Oxford involving Louise, intended to reinforce stability, dignity, and unity within the royal family. A digital evidence file, codenamed FYL-7, containing metadata and verification of fabrication, was submitted within 48 hours to multiple press watchdog organizations and Ofcom. Sophie reportedly concluded with a sharp observation. Meghan is seeking shock value. Give her silence and legacy. Nothing undermines narcissism faster. By late evening, Buckingham Palace's legal counsel, Sir Jonathan Wexford, issued a confidential cease and desist order to Meghan's legal team in Los Angeles. The notice reportedly included full chain of custody evidence of the altered video, an invitation for private settlement discussions, and a formal warning. Any targeting of minors or royal affiliates would trigger Section 8 protections under the UK's revised Royal Defamation Act 2024. The moment Spotify's compliance division flagged the phrase fabricated sexual misconduct, internal alarms were triggered across corporate Slack channels. Staff quickly advised an immediate halt on all promotional activity until a complete legal and editorial review could be conducted. Publicly, Meghan's team maintained a composed and steady front, but insiders indicate that behind closed doors, panic took hold as soon as details of the Windsor summit began circulating online. One senior PR advisor reportedly warned her, "If even part of this holds up, Spotify will shut it down. You lose the comeback narrative entirely. Everything collapses." Internally, her team shifted rapidly into crisis management, directing Archwell's content division to pivot toward legacy-focused storytelling, highlighting themes of motherhood, race, and philanthropy. However, a UK-based PR strategist cautioned bluntly, "You can't switch from digital sabotage to soft-focused storytelling overnight. The palace isn't managing optics, they're constructing a legal stronghold." By dawn, the royal household had already moved decisively. While Meghan's Los Angeles team continued preparing her podcast episode for internal testing, apparently intending to proceed with release despite the escalating situation, the British monarchy quietly activated Operation Blackwing, a rapid response digital strategy aimed at neutralizing media threats before they could reach the public. The trigger point was unmistakable. The emergence of the deepfake video targeting Lady Louise's partner, combined with Meghan's reported demands to Princess and days earlier, requesting diplomatic privileges, VIP security access, and restored royal status. According to palace sources, what was intended as leverage instead activated a full-scale institutional response. Thomas Everhart, communications director to Duchess Catherine, coordinated a select network of verified digital influencers and royal-aligned voices to shape the online narrative preemptively. By 8 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, hashtags such as hashtag Protect Louise, hashtag Royal Integrity, hashtag Stand with Sophie, and hashtag Digital Defamation were trending prominently across the UK and Canada. Leading media figures, including Emily Thornwell of the BBC, Hugo Caro of ITV, and Nain Phillips of The Telegraph, began circulating reports suggesting that Meghan's upcoming podcast could feature potentially falsified material involving a member of the royal family. Across platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok, royal supporters quickly analyzed leaked clips, sharing side-by-side comparisons that highlighted inconsistencies in metadata and visual elements. Analysts noted that this was not a simple leak, but a coordinated disruption of Meghan's narrative, executed with precise timing. As public backlash intensified, corporate partners began distancing themselves. Oasis Apparel paused her capsule collection and removed her promotional imagery. Ritual Wellness, a brand affiliated with Archewell, delayed its upcoming March campaign. Meanwhile, Spotify's European division froze all advertising tied to her podcast trailer pending further review. Company statements were carefully worded but carried a clear message. We cannot promote content involving unresolved legal concerns, particularly those affecting non-consenting individuals, minors, or members of the royal family. At 11:45 Greenwich Mean Time, Lady Louise Windsor, accompanied by Duchess Sophie and Princess Catherine, made an unexpected appearance at Oxford Royal Children's Hospital. Dressed in a soft blue coat, Louise spent time with pediatric cancer patients, spoke gently with families, and appeared alongside Sophie and Catherine in photographs that quickly dominated UK media coverage. In that moment, the narrative had shifted and firmly returned to the royal family's control. Louise's image rapidly shifted, from being the focus of a scandal to becoming a symbol of quiet resilience and royal dignity. That same evening, the Daily Mail carried a bold front-page headline: Windsor stands united, smear campaign crushed. By 1400 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Kensington Palace released a rare legal notice, co-signed by 3 royal law firms and reviewed by GCHQ, warning that any dissemination of manipulated content involving Lady Louise Windsor, Felix Clamp, or their private lives would trigger full legal action under the UK Royal Defamation Law 2024. The notice included technical evidence pointing to image manipulation and metadata tampering traced back to a California-based contractor previously linked to Archewell Studios. At this point, Princess Anne and Duchess Sophie had been granted full institutional backing and legal authority to act independently. What began as a personal threat had escalated into a matter of digital security. Cybersecurity experts observed that the Crown was now treating the situation as a case of reputational espionage, with clear international implications. Meanwhile, Meghan's team struggled to regain control of the narrative, but found themselves increasingly cornered. A teaser clip from her podcast episode, uploaded at 1900 hours Greenwich Mean Time, received over 4,000 dislikes within just 20 minutes and was heavily ratioed across platforms. The comment sections filled rapidly. You tried to ruin a 22-year-old girl's life just to get back into the royal family. You've completely lost direction. Digital blackmail isn't activism. The Crown sees everything, and so does the public. Sources suggest Meghan began reconsidering the episode altogether, concerned it could further damage her already fragile brand partnerships. However, insiders connected to Netflix indicated that contractual obligations, particularly from Spotify and other investors, left little room for withdrawal. One executive reportedly stated bluntly, "She accepted the deal, she has to deliver." The podcast isn't being pulled. Meghan is said to have told her legal team, "We'll edit it as much as we need to, but it's still going out." Royal analysts noted a stark reality. Even a heavily edited release would remain a powerful narrative tool, one fully under scrutiny by the Crown. Every second of content was being monitored as palace legal and digital teams maintained round-the-clock oversight. Ultimately, Meghan released the highly anticipated episode early under the title Royal Truths: Power, Protection, and the Price of Silence. Running 58 minutes, the episode blended personal storytelling, commentary, and indirect criticism. But by that stage, the palace had already neutralized much of the reputational risk and reinforced Lady Louise Windsor's public standing. The podcast was framed as a bold re-examination of royal systems, a reflection on empowerment and hidden truths within palace life. Yet critics quickly pointed out that beneath the surface, the narrative blurred the line between personal testimony and calculated reputational targeting. The most striking moment came at minute 36 when Meghan's voice, calm but sharply deliberate, cut through. Silence isn't protection, it's complicity. Especially when young women are being shielded from truths they don't even realize they're part of. While no names were mentioned, the implication was widely interpreted as intentional, crafted to cast doubt at a critical moment. Within just 20 minutes of the episode going live, royal legal teams filed an emergency injunction with Spotify's EU headquarters, citing indirect targeting through coded language and narrative framing. Public reaction was immediate. The hashtag exploitative podcast surged to the top of trending lists across the UK and Canada. Major outlets including BBC, Sky News, CNN, and the Times of London reported that the palace was preparing for potential full legal action. Spotify's internal legal division convened an emergency review to assess whether the episode violated contractual terms or protections surrounding public figures. Perhaps most telling was the reaction from listeners themselves. Meghan's podcast page was quickly flooded with raw, unfiltered criticism, reflecting a wave of public backlash that showed no signs of slowing. Dragging a young woman's reputation through vague, coded storytelling isn't journalism, it's a calculated hit. Why imply without evidence? Because naming names would open the door to immediate legal consequences. Using someone else's life to revive a fading brand isn't empowerment, it's exploitation. By 7 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, a rare joint video statement was released by Princess Anne and Princess Catherine, filmed within the historic chambers of Windsor Castle. Standing side by side, they delivered what many commentators described as one of the strongest royal responses in decades. Princess Anne spoke first, her tone sharp and unyielding. When the integrity of a young woman under our protection is distorted to serve another's narrative of redemption, we are obligated to respond, not with spectacle but with truth. Princess Catherine followed with composed authority. Lady Louise Windsor is not a storyline. She is not a headline, and she is not afraid. Within hours, major UK newspapers featured the image of Anne and Catherine together, presenting it as a powerful display of unity, leadership, and maternal protection. Later that afternoon, Duchess Sophie appeared on ITV's Afternoon Outlook, speaking not only as a royal, but as a mother. Her voice briefly faltered before regaining strength. There is a clear boundary between media freedom and personal cruelty. That boundary was crossed today. Sophie confirmed that Louise had listened to the podcast, acknowledging that while she was hurt, she remained composed and resolute. She emphasized that the family stood firmly behind her. Her closing remark resonated deeply with viewers. You don't become a royal by marrying into it, you become one by standing up for it. At 16:45 Greenwich Mean Time, Buckingham Palace released a detailed forensic report conducted by a leading digital media lab in Brussels. The findings were conclusive. The alleged video involving Felix Clamp was 99.2% likely a deepfake, constructed using altered footage from a 2024 charity event. The audio had been artificially generated through AI voice cloning, and metadata traced the manipulation to January 22, 2026, just 3 days before Meghan's reported outreach to Princess Anne. The lab's conclusion was unequivocal. This was engineered defamation, not journalism. Soon after, Lady Louise Windsor made a public appearance of her own, delivering a keynote address at the Royal College of St. George on ethics, identity, and modern responsibility. She left no doubt about her position, stating, "Your name isn't defined by what others whisper, it's defined by what you say when they try to silence you." The audience rose in a standing ovation, cementing her image as a figure of composure and strength. Media outlets worldwide, from London to the New York Times, published editorials praising her response with headlines such as, "The Making of a Royal, Louise Windsor Steps Forward with Dignity Amid Controversy." By March 6, Spotify issued a partial retraction along with a content advisory for Meghan's episode, stating, "Episode 1 of Real Narrative will now include disclaimers and edited audio, removing potentially defamatory implications." Sources indicate Meghan was frustrated, but bound by contractual obligations, now reassessing her multi-project agreements with greater caution. One producer reportedly commented, "She played the royal card too many times, and now she's realized the odds were never in her favor." Despite the damage to Meghan's brand, the palace's most lasting move became evident. Lady Louise Windsor is set to receive her first full-time royal patronage, focusing on youth media ethics and digital safety. Felix Clamp, fully cleared of all allegations, will co-host a summit on AI and reputational security this May. Princess enclosed her public remarks with a statement that resonated globally. "We didn't just protect a name, we helped shape what comes next." This story, of resilience, strategy, and integrity, continues to unfold. Beyond the headlines, the palace's swift and decisive response serves as a reminder. Defending truth isn't just about reputation. It's about legacy, responsibility, and safeguarding the future generation of the monarchy. And if you want to stay updated on every dramatic royal development, behind-the-scenes strategy, and the full story of Lady Louise Windsor's rise, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Because this story is far from finished.